So yesterday I made my video about the human beings located in Africa being seen as an isolated tribe, a tribe of people only belonging to West Africa. And of course, with a little bit of expansion in South Africa and what they would team or what they would say is the mixed group of Ethiopia. Now, I want to start by saying this, which is we are to expect way more DNA studies. In fact, I'm going to make another bold prediction right now. I bet you that they're going to find that most Nubians were mixed. I bet you that that is what they're going to say happened in the past. If not, they are going to completely remove the African DNA of Nubians. So, what exactly happened in the study? Well, from Nature, if my reading is correct, what they're claiming is that they found one person who they did a whole genome test on, and they found that he was 20% Levantine or 20% Mesopotamian. And then they say the other 80% is symbolic or is representative of current North Africans. So, in other words, not even a percentage is representative of what they call sub Saharan DNA. In fact, they specify that the one that they were expecting to be there, Mota, which is the DNA from East Africa, they found completely absent in this one individual. And then, of course, some people went to build this larger narrative about it, which is that this means that ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia are basically two ends of the same civilization, and they basically separate in the Middle East, which is something I kind of warned against for a lot of the people on my channel who like to talk about it, because once you accept this, to a lot of people, you're accepting that basically ancient Egypt is a Middle Eastern civilization, not an African civilization. And now begins the slow crawl to convert ancient Egypt into a Middle Eastern civilization, which now they're saying it was a cultural exchange. So, in other words, some ideas in Egypt went to Mesopotamia, and some ideas from Mesopotamia went to Egypt, which is hilarious because in other ways, the historians always say that the cultural diffusion theory, the idea that people from Egypt and Mesopotamia were trading ideas, and you can see it in their gods and stuff like that, they always downplay it. And then now they find one person with 20% DNA from Mesopotamia, and they're willing to re accept all of that. Now, removing the fact that the person was from Mesopotamia, something that is proven by this DNA, which a lot of people within the African space have been saying for a long time, which is that people from Mesopotamia must have been dark skinned at least for a very long time. And this is proven within this study because even with the 20% increase of DNA, the person from the site, Nuarat, who they've tested genetically, still comes across as not having the proper DNA to have pale skin. And so his phenotype has been predicted to being dark to black skin, even though they've removed the sort of African DNA potential inside of this one individual. Whether or not he's in Mesopotamia or not, he would have still represented a fairly black skin. Even though I don't agree with them on everything, this is more coherent and it makes more sense as a alternative theory to the black African theory. it makes more sense than saying that the pale skinned people living today are the exact same as the people living in the past, and that the dark skin represented in ancient Egypt is a metaphor or anything stupid like that. In real life, the dark skin, I mean, if this genetic test is true, the dark skin still represents actual dark skin that existed back in the past. Now, again, I want you guys to take this in. Two things. One, I'm just reading the study that recently came out. And like I said yesterday, be prepared because this is going to keep happening. And then two, um, clearly the pale skin thing is not a real thing that happened in the future. Now, again, I'm already seeing the writing on the wall. These people being dark skinned, Nubians being dark skinned. Yeah. By the way, unlike other tests done on DNA, this one explicitly tries and says that is an exclusion of African DNA within this person. Again, this is one person in Egypt, and we all know that there must have been black people in Egypt, and there must have been a significant number. So using this one person is actually pretty weird, especially given how long the history of ancient Egypt is. Now, of course, this DNA is from around 2000 something BC because it's from 4000, I think 800 years ago. And this is, by the way, I'm just reporting what they say. This is what they say about it. So they say, moreover, it is notable that both our modeling and admixture clustering excluded any substantial ancestry in the Nuara genome related to the 4,500-year-old genome from Mota, Ethiopia, or other individuals in Central, Eastern, or Southern Africa. Extended data, nevertheless, we found that the Nora genome fits as an equally good source as Levant Chalcolithic groups for the West Eurasian related components of East African pastoralist genomes, but ancient DNA data are still missing for many putative source regions. Supplementary information section 4. Now, here's the thing about the site, it's actually tens of kilometers away from Cairo. And so it's not claiming to represent the north part of Egypt, as some people like to claim. In this one, it's actually trying to represent some of the most southerly parts of Egypt. Now, it's not the south, but it's representing some of the southern parts. Now, this is what they say about this thing so far, but as we know with previous DNA tests, they do change, just like the 2017 one that first claimed that the DNA was similar to Europeans, and then they changed it and said this it was more similar to Middle Easterners. And then, of course, they first said there was no African DNA, and then they were said there was like 14% or something like that, and that the modern ones had increased by 6%. But, it's been going in this direction for a while now, and we'll see what they will come up with next. I'm glad I made my prediction before any of this came out because people would not believe me that this is the direction things are headed. But let me make another prediction. I promise you that these people are going to find a way for the Nubians to be Middle Eastern with little to no sub Saharan African DNA. That's going to happen eventually. Now, if you're probably wondering why I am still showing this, even though I am on the other side of this, it's because I want to highlight something that was said by other Egyptologists that accused some of these Egyptologists of wanting to paint the entire population of Egypt as white. And I also want to put up that thing that some people, they said, oh, you're wasting your time arguing with some of these people because they will always accept a different view. Getting the multicultural point of view, that was an extra step compared to what most of these people believe. In fact, there are some characters that we know that accepted a multicultural point of view, and like I said, that point of view, it used to be considered Afrocentric. That point of view, and with this DNA, it seems like they're trying to pull that back down and make it back to was not a multicultural point of view, was not a multicultural civilization. They're trying to point out that this civilization was purely foreigners within Africa. And of course, remember what I said yesterday, 10,000 BC? They make that claim over and over again in this one. Now, I know this is going to be upsetting to some people, but it is important that I cover this video. What did I say in my previous video, by the way? One of the upsetting things in history, at least in the study of history, is the observation of race and the observation of Africa as an isolated continent. Now, there's actually many ways to interpret this DNA over here, but that's something we should probably do some other time. I just wanted to cover it because it would be dishonest of me to pretend that it did not come out.